Hello, welcome to 4 Minutes Closer to God. And my name is Doug. Today I wanted to talk about Leviticus 23 and holidays. So we have in Leviticus 23 a listing of the feasts that the Lord had ordered up through the calendar of the Jews as they were going into the promised land, and they were remembrances of things that had occurred. So in the Exodus, leaving Egypt, we had the Passover, and so that happens on the 14th day of the first month, starting at twilight, and then the next day they have the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and that is because they were not allowing the bread to rise, given the leaven that helps it to reach its full maturity. And so they were packing up and going, getting out of Egypt quickly, and did not allow the bread to rise, so it's unleavened bread. Then they went on to the Feast of Firstfruits. This was, once she established the pattern in the promised land about the harvest and stuff, you would offer firstfruits to the Lord, and the firstfruits were an example of what our tithing should be. We should take from the top of what we earn and not the dregs or what's left over as we tithe and give offerings to the Lord. So this was their offering. What it meant was the first fruits would be the best seeds and grains and such that would then allow them to have a great harvest the next year. And so first fruits is that pattern that God established to help enable their preservation and their growth in the time in the promised land. Next is the Feast of Weeks, 50 days later, which we have in the death and resurrection of Christ at the Passover. Then we have his ascension 40 days later, and 50 days later we have the coming of the Holy Spirit, and that is represented in Leviticus 23 by the Feast of Weeks. Following that, sometime later, in the seventh month, the first day of the seventh month, we have the Feast of Trumpets, and it is understood through Revelation 12 that Jesus was born at the time of the Feast of Trumpets, and his birthday for us, our calendar, would be September 11th, 3 BC. And so he was born at that time, which is an astral prophecy recorded in Revelation 12. And then after that, as far as the feasts in Leviticus, we have the Feast of Atonement, or the Day, of Atonement. God covers the sins of Israel by their atonement, the Yom Kippur. And so that covering then makes it possible for us to live in the presence of God, because we have not lived properly up until that time, and the atonement then is God's covering over us so that we can be presented as perfect people. This feast in Leviticus is followed by the Feast of Tabernacles. And so the Tabernacles is a remembrance where booths are set up in order to hold a place and keep this feast going, where the booths then are representative of time in the wilderness and their ingathering into the promised land. Thank you for joining me. See you next time on 4 Minutes Closer to God.